Hello, everybody, and welcome to my first book review. I'm going to start with one that I've read a couple times. This is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And you may have heard of this book. It's pretty famous. It's a book that I read in high school. It was kind of forced to read in high school, and actually enjoyed it a lot. And then I decided to pick it up about a year ago again and sort of see what I thought of something, after it's been 15 years or 16 years since I read it originally. And I was pretty amazed with it again. I was actually more blown away now than I was when I first read it. And the funny thing was, when I was reading it this time, I wondered if I even really read it the first time at all, because it's completely different than how I remembered it. And it's a lot more, there's a lot more symbolism in it. It's a lot more of a deep book than I realized at the time, but I guess that's the whole thing of being 17 and reading a book versus being 35 or 34 at the time reading a book. And if you haven't read this book and you don't know anything about it, it's basically it's a kind of a dark utopia book, and I'll actually read the back here, which I don't really like reading the back, but this one kind of sums it up pretty well. So it says, a fantasy of the future that sheds a blazing critical light on the present, considered to be Aldous Huxley's most enduring masterpiece. Aldous Huxley's tour de force, Brave New World, is a darkly satiric version of a utopian future, where humans are genetically bred and pharmaceutically anesthetized to passively serve a ruling order. A powerful work of speculative fiction that has enthralled and terrified readers for generations, it remains remarkably relevant to this day as both a warning to be heeded as we head into tomorrow and as thought-provoking satisfying entertainment. It's pretty interesting because this book was written a long time ago. Let me get an exact date here. It was published in 1932 originally, which is just quite a while ago, 80 years. And the funny thing is, a lot of the stuff he wrote about seems to already have happened or similar things. So it's fascinating to kind of see how somebody from 1932, when you think of 32, you think, kind of the Great Depression, the Grapes of Wrath, that sort of stuff, the beginnings of that kind of stuff. And you wouldn't think about it like a sci-fi kind of fantasy book coming out and how accurate it would be. Another interesting note about this book is that Orson Welles, who wrote, George Orwell, I always get them mixed up. George Orwell, who wrote 1984, which is a very famous book about a similar kind of story, is they're kind of linked together. This is kind of the precursor. 1984 came out, I think, in 1949, and there's actually a note that Aldous Huxley wrote to George Orwell saying, I think our books are a lot alike, and they're very parallel to each other. Aldous Huxley thought that 1984 was kind of like the sequel to Brave New World, like what happens to a utopia after it starts breaking down. The 1984 is a very dark book, and it's just, it's pretty cool to see how these guys wrote these things a long time ago and how they're still really relevant today, and how important it is to think for yourself and not just go along with what the people tell you to do, what you see on TV or what's cool, and to think outside the box and just do what you feel you should do and not what, is kind of the trendy thing to do. I think that goes a lot, beyond books. Well, first of all, reading these days is sadly becoming sort of like that. Not really trendy to do. It's all about, watching the movie or playing the video game or something. And to me, you just can't beat having pages in your hand. And it's like a movie. Books are like movies. only better because you're using your imagination, and it's a lot longer instead of an hour and 45-minute movie where you're watching everything and being told everything visually without thinking. A book like this, or most books in general, you're doing all the thinking. You're coming up with all the scenes in your head, and it's just hard to beat that. I mean, it's nice to use your brain every once in a while. So anyway, I highly recommend Brave New World. I do have to warn you that the first chapter or so is really dense material. It's all very scientific, and it's very dry, and it's very tough to get through. But once you get through that and start getting into the characters, the main characters, and you'll start to see why this book has been famous and why it's still published after all these years, and it'll really draw you in. Well, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you pick up this copy, and let me know what you think. Maybe you read it and thought it sucked. That's cool. Leave a comment and subscribe, please, and have a good day. Thank you very much. Bye.